Member for Bateman.
Thank you, Acting Speaker. I'm extremely pleased to rise today to contribute to the Owner Drivers Contract and Disputes Bill 2022. I think it's fair to say that during COVID we learnt a lot about ourselves and each other. For example, the average West Australian household requires about 200 rolls of toilet paper in reserve, and I learnt that the 2-packet a day pasta limit in supermarkets was not enough to feed my 3 hungry children. We were also reminded, if we needed it, of the amazing work that our health professionals do to support our community and to keep us safe, and the efforts that they went to, particularly in the early days of the pandemic when there was a lot that was unknown and people were dying across the country, to continue to turn up and work and serve our community is exceptional. There are of course others who stepped up during that period. We had frontline retail staff who dealt with those angry, panicked shoppers who didn't have the option to work from home, and of course our teachers in our schools who not only dealt with the anxiety of families dealing with their students, but also transitioned so quickly to online learning, which was an incredible amount of work that they achieved in that time. And of course the efforts of our police force in managing the emergency controls that were put in place to keep WA safe. But there's another group of workers whose contribution often goes unacknowledged, and that's that of our transport workers. COVID was possibly the first time that many West Australians have considered the security and reliability of our supply chains. And that's now something that's probably front and centre of much of our awareness. And we go into shops, we want to purchase a new car, perhaps we're waiting on parts for a computer. It's certainly something we're very aware of now. Nothing in our economy moves without transport workers. Without them, our economy stops. The things that we rely on, not only the export of our goods from Western Australia, our iron ore industry, our agricultural produce, but also the things as a household that we rely on for our quality of life, going to the supermarket, our TVs, our couches and our cars, the construction materials to build our new homes or to do renovations. They all, of course, rely on transport workers. And in WA in particular, and I did a recent road trip during the winter break, I wandered out yonder, and it's a very big distance in our state, and those distances are covered by our transport workers who travel for hours to get goods across our state. So for a long time our transport workers have done their work perhaps unrecognised and under-recognised, but their conditions are tough, as has been noted by the contributions before me. Our landmark 12-year study into the health and wellbeing of Australia's truck drivers revealed that they have a 13-fold higher risk of dying at work than any other Australian workers, making it the most dangerous occupation in the country. Truck drivers can have long working hours, lots of sitting, potentially poor nutrition, social isolation, shift work, time pressures, low levels of job control, and of course the risk of road traffic crashes. So since coming to government in 2017, the McGowan government has sought to improve some of these conditions. For example, invested over $30 million in 2018 on 15 road projects, rest stops and road assembly areas. $50 million towards the Pinjarra heavy haulage deviation to deliver a safe alternate route for heavy vehicles, and engage with industry and other stakeholders, particularly during the early days of COVID, to identify and supply freight movement challenges. And as a result of that, the Minister for Transport in 2020 approved planning changes under the state of emergency to provide exemptions to vehicle operating hours to allow the supply of essential goods and services to supermarkets 24/7. Just like any other business or any other worker, owner drivers rely on a decent rate of return to be viable. Currently, as has been noted, there is an uneven bargaining power between owner drivers who sit at the bottom often of a lengthy chain of contractors and subcontractors. And this leaves many of them in a take it or leave it position, often pitted against large multinationals whose bargaining and contractual power is so much greater. The amendments in this bill will strengthen the ability of owner drivers to negotiate on a more even playing field. In particular, the amendments clarify the tribunal's jurisdictions and powers. They introduce a right of entry provision. They set minimum notice periods of termination, and they address procedural deficiencies and operational inefficiencies. The notice period for termination is an important consideration. Sometimes owner-drivers have a contract to transport quite specific goods, and those require amendments or changes to the trucks and you can imagine if they've invested significantly in their infrastructure and their capital, to lose a contract at short notice doesn't necessarily give them the opportunity to be able to transition to providing a service to deliver other types of goods and services, and certainly not without considerable cost. The amendments in this bill also expands the tribunal scope for determining unconscionable conduct by hirers, and that's also a very important provision. An owner-operator might enter into a contract with a hirer and then have the costs of providing that service significantly increase beyond that owner-driver's control. And an obvious example is the fuel increases that we have seen. And that has run-on effects to the viability of that contract. So these expanded scope for the tribunal to determine this is an important provision to ensuring that owner-drivers are able to be in the best position to secure a fair return for their work. This is not only a really basic principle that people should receive a fair return for their work or services, but in the transport industry, it's an essential safety element. This has been noted by the member for Mirrabooka in her contribution and the member for Mount Lawley as well. If you're operating a truck and your contract does not enable you to meet the next requirement to maintain your vehicle, you are going to push that maintenance schedule out potentially. Another impact is that you may work longer hours, which is on top of what we know as an industry that already has extremely long working hours. I certainly know that I don't want to be on the roads with a truck operator who is extremely stressed, tired, and wondering how they're going to make ends meet. A consequence as well is that there's an increasing number of truck drivers leaving the industry, and as has already been noted, given the absolutely critical role that truck operators and transport operators provide to our economy, this shortage of workers will have dire consequences across the economy. When transport operators have safe and fair conditions, it improves safety for all road users. Currently, the amendments in this bill do not extend to vehicles below 4.5 tonne gross vehicle mass limitation. And I note the Minister for Transport's commitment and the McGowan Government's commitment to introduce further amendments to expand the current owner-driver laws to broaden the scope of the Act beyond the current limit. And I look forward to seeing what the Minister for Transport brings to this House, and I know she'll consult widely, as is her strong record. So it would be remiss of me to talk about improving the conditions and safety of the transport industry without mentioning my good friend, Senator Glenn Sterle. Senator Sterle is an intergenerational truckie and has always been and remains a staunch advocate for the rights and conditions of drivers and the industry. He has been campaigning tirelessly on many issues of importance to the industry, including his very successful campaign to improve the sometimes atrocious conditions truck drivers face at rest stops across Western Australia and the country. Senator Sterle puts his money where his mouth is, and in between sitting weeks in Canberra is still an active truckie. As we speak, he is driving a road train to the Kimberley region to deliver over 250 new and unused mattresses and bed bases, which his office collected and loaded to Fitzroy Crossing, where they will be distributed to families across the Fitzroy Valley. On this particular trip, Senator Sterle is being supported by the Bedshed, Keys, the Moving Solutions and Centurion Transport. I rang Senator Sterle about 7 p.m. last night to say hello and check in, and he was still on the road at the end of a long day on his way into Mount Magnet. This trip is just one of the regular runs Senator Sterle makes into the regions of WA. I recently put out a call to my constituents in Bateman for donations of used furniture to support Senator Sterle's next trip, which is for the Waste to Wages program, which he operates in connection and partnership with the East Kimberley Jobs Pathway, an organisation in Kununurra that provides training and employment through the East Kimberley. Waste to wages, trains and employs Aboriginal youth to collect and repair recyclable items for their store called Revive. I would like to thank my very many generous Bateman constituents who have committed used furniture for this program, and of course I extend my sincere thanks and acknowledgement to Senator Sterle and his partners for this and other fantastic programs that he supports. I'd also like to acknowledge the Transport Workers Union and WA State Secretary Tim Dawson for their continued fight for the rights and conditions of transport members and also for the broader industry. As I already said, a safe and fair industry benefits everyone, and it's essential not only for the sustainable future of the industry, but for our economy and the safety of all road users. So on that note, I would like to congratulate the Minister for Transport for bringing this very important bill to the House, and I certainly commend it to the House. Thank you.